All right.
Stream is live.
We are live.
We are
All right, we are live. Hello. I should have put the 30-second countdown, but we're here. Everybody's populating in the comment section. Hello, everyone. Lucas, Kenneth, Carrie, AC Cruz. Everybody's jumping in here. Don't know if William's showing up. He was invited, but he may not be. I don't know if he responded or not, so he may not be here. So it's Joel and I.
William's a bit of a wild card, is he not?
Yes. Well, he works, and this is in the middle of his work day, and so
That's true.
Sometimes he has something scheduled. So it's not that he doesn't like us; it's just he's a wild card.
Sometimes he even washes his hands before he comes on.
Those greasy hands, yeah.
Yes, we've all seen it. We all know. So
I remember working with grease, and you have to have very specific type of soap to get that stuff off your hands, man. Oof. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. And Joel, good to see you.
Good to see you,
Michael. I figured today was a perfect day to have you over here because everybody's chomping at the bit. Everybody wants to know what happened this weekend, what's going on. You want the update. And I'm like, all right,
my bit is completely gone. I've been chomping so much.
You've nodded away down to nothing.
Need updates. Need the info. Let's go.
All right. Hold on. I got a text. Okay. Right after this, so I may be jumping out of here like 5 minutes before the end because I have a meeting with somebody that I met in Idaho. I have a follow-up meeting. Why don't I start my update there? I'll go through the whole weekend, but the guy that I'm meeting with, I sat next to him at I was invited to a family dinner on Saturday night. And one of the things that Doug Wilson encourages everyone, all Christians, in particular the parishioners in his vicinity, to hold weekly, I think they just call them Sabbath dinners, right? Saturday night. And it's, we need as believers and families to get together on a regular basis. And so there's a lot of the people in the church do that. They follow through and they have these big family gatherings every Saturday night. And it's to give mom Sunday off, right? Sunday's a day of rest. So don't make her cook on Sunday. Don't do it on Sunday. That's the day of rest. Do it Saturday night and everybody pitch in, et cetera. And she can cook a meal, whatever. So I was invited to the Sabbath dinner of a couple. They own a restaurant in town in Moscow, and I think they own another business. And then the wife is the head of the Masters in Fine Arts at New St. Andrews College. So the wife is the faculty head of the Masters in Fine Arts degree. And it's a fledgling department, but I got connected to her and I think William's showing up. Let's see. When he popped in,
there he is. He's coming.
All right. That's a black hole right now.
It is.
Do not come.
That's a lot of grease.
Do not come. Do not come. That's what they say. I came.
Let's see. Keep him away.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. I got to step back and catch up. Sorry, running a little late.
I switched you. No, that's fine. That's fine.
No, we just started.
You have a fan base here. I barely began talking. All right. So, William, are you aware of anything? Like, I went away for the weekend for an important meeting.
You went to Moscow.
Okay.
Idaho. Yeah. Hey, you know what's funny is when I heard you went to Moscow, Idaho, the first thing I thought of was potatoes, and then I got to thinking about Devo, the potato heads. Remember that? But they were from not Ohio. They were from Illinois or Arkansas, but they were the potato heads. Remember that, fellow potato heads?
Devo was called the potato heads?
Well, they kind of coined that term. If you actually look at some of their like their recordings and all, they involved them. The reason why it was a sarcastic remark to society's normality and not thinking outside the box. Because if you kind of figure how Devo actually came to be and what they were all involved in, they were, their main expression was to try to think outside of the box, a new way, a new something,
Got it.
And that's, I can get behind that.
They pulled it off. Devo was definitely Definitely a new thing when they came on.
But
Right.
one of my favorite songs is "Gut Feeling." You ever heard that? You know what I'm talking about? Of course,
We're
I'm
not
way.
we're not going on a tangent, William. We're not.
Okay,
Well,
all right, good deal.
then
Music,
why did you invite William?
right? I told producer Gina. I'll rein William in if he goes off.
All right.
Round me up. What's up, Lucas?
So
Bonnie Creighton. I gotta get Bonnie. I know I'm gonna make a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
racket. I'm screwing. I'm messing
Bonnie.
up.
you are
Yeah.
you are free to put the comments up. Time is ticking, and I already told Joel that I'm going to probably be jumping out a couple minutes early because I have to do something else, a meeting that I set up with somebody from Moscow. All right, so real quick background. The project I've been working on, I got the book done, like a lookbook. When you're developing something in Hollywood, you have to get it into a place where it's easily they don't need you in the room to explain everything. You can hand them something for them to look through and figure it out on their own. Bottom line, it's called a lookbook, and it's for investors or collaborators just to understand the project they're working on. So after 6 years of development and research, etc., I have the lookbook. It's 144 page, really nice. I got 25 of them made for investors, and now it's time to reach out. So I knew this time was coming. So in advance, I had reached out to Doug Wilson. If you don't know who he is, William, he's a polarizing figure in Christendom. He's an agitator. He's a guy who is not going to let anybody get away with compromising the gospel, compromising the truth of the word. And from the top of the political, from politics all the way down to your average Christian, that attends church on a Sunday, he's comprehensive. I really think he's a modern day prophet, if you will. He understands the word inside and out. He understands culture inside and out. And listening to him, I knew he would understand the importance of my project, because he would talk about history. Every now and he'd remember, or every now and then he'd mention, and such in the scripture is now in modern day Turkey. And then he would mention things. And so I knew he at least knew the history. So I reached out to him in June and got a Zoom or a StreamYard conversation with him, and told him about Solomon Tellurian and the story. And he said, quote, this'll light a fire in the hayloft. And those are colloquialisms, very common Doug Wilson colloquialisms. This will light a fire in the hayloft. What happens, William, when you light a fire in the hayloft?
It spreads very quickly.
Where's the hayloft?
It's in a barn. It's where you keep all your. Well, it's very valuable at that time, because that's the food for your for all your livestock. And hay was a very, 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 very expensive commodity, or a very well used commodity, and needed.
So
great demand.
When you set a fire in the hayloft, it spreads to the barn and results in another colloquialism, a barn burner. Right? What happens when the barn goes up? Everybody gathers around to watch, right? And so, setting the fire in the hayloft is the beginning of a big conflagration. So he understood that this is politically charged and would be that Doug is one to launch head first into politically charged issues. So I knew I had hooked him. And I told him when I first started, told him the story. He says, well, my sister was a missionary in Istanbul and married an Armenian. So I was like, okay, shorthand. I can skip all the history. He understood the history. So the point was to get him a copy of this lookbook for him to read through it. So he got an early copy, read through it, set up another meeting back in September. And in that meeting in September, he connected me both to his school. He runs a college, New St. Andrews, it's classical education. So he connected me to his school and to a hedge fund, right? An investment group. So it's like, so Doug Wilson was God said, you got to reach out to Doug Wilson. And I resisted and I resisted and I resisted. And finally God said, you got to reach out to Doug Wilson. I did. And lo and behold, it has borne fruit. What are you gonna say, William?
Okay. A question. So I think, and I'm going to try my best to read your mind. The resistance comes from the fact that that there's possibly going to be another door opened up, which requires commitment Commitment is time. Time is interruptible. The Bible says to be interruptible. And so, if you mess with this dude, he's going to hook you up. And now you've got investors, you've got a real deal, you're getting deep into stuff. And now you're like, okay. And you have to be ready for your life to make those turns. And that's what puts a lot of people in fear and in speculation of moving in a different direction, knowing that it can significantly change your life and your priorities.
All of that. Those are the things I'm anticipating, but you don't want to get ahead of yourself, right? If you move too quickly and you're not ready, it falls apart and it fails. So my hesitation on this was I'm like, I don't want to be jumping the gun. Is this real? Is this just an idea that's occurring to me, or is this something God's inspiring in me? And by delaying it, I use Gideon as example. Gideon's, he had 2 fleeces, right? He said, God, make the fleece wet and everything else dry. And God did it. And then he's like, Gideon's like, I know God did that, but let me try again. Now make the fleece dry and everything else wet. And God did that. So this was that kind of thing I kind of see, like when God first inspired me, reach out to Doug Wilson. A couple months later, I kept listening to his stuff, followed through. So long story, just a little bit longer. After the Zoom meeting with Doug in September, the next step was for me to get there face to face. So I reached out. I got connected to some of the people. I got connected to a person at the college who was kind of like my inside person. She finds out when everybody's going to be in town, when's the best time for me to come to meet more people, because it's not just Doug, it's all these other people, a part of his ministry and service to the Lord, and it's the college, all that. So she told me this past weekend, the 17th, Friday through the 19th, was the best time to come. So I put it on the calendar, I scheduled it, I got my travel plans all together, found a rental apartment, like a bed and breakfast or something, and showed up, and my first meeting was with Doug, and it was just as an excerpt. It was about an hour and 15 for 15 minutes. In the middle of this meeting, Doug Wilson is listening to one of my band's songs on YouTube, listening to all the lyrics. It's called the Reluctant, and I mentioned it's kind of like Jonah, the reluctant prophet, and he got it. And at the end, he goes on YouTube and pulls up a music video that he did a couple of years ago. And we sit there and I watch, and I pulled out my camera and I videotaped him watching himself on the screen, etc. And then I took him to another music video of and so we just really bonded in that regard. But after Doug said, me, I go and go and go, and I talk and talk and talk. And then I look up and I'm like, wonder if he's fallen asleep or what. And I look up and he's like, I'm all in. That's what he said. I'm like, that was it. I was like, and that was like halfway through the meeting, or at the beginning, first 20 minutes of the meeting, he said that. And he goes, if I had money, I'd write you a check right now. Right. If I had the money, I'd write you. I'm like, okay, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
By the end of the meeting, basically it wrapped up. He asked, who else am I meeting with this weekend? And I listed the different people I'd be meeting with. He said, okay, at the end of the weekend, I'll interview all of those people, and then I'll write a letter to the investor. Let me set him by name. And so it was like, okay. So from that point, it's like, I better make a good impression on all these other people. I'm like, me make a good impression? I don't know.
I mean, to me, the best impressions are when your heart is pure and your thoughts are true.
Right.
Yeah. Don't forget my first impression of you, Michael. Do you remember what that was?
Just this flaky Hollywood guy. I don't know.
Yeah. At best, maybe I went to my producer. I said, this guy's either a total nut job or he's a tortured genius. I don't know which, and maybe it's somewhere in between. Maybe it's a little of both. But
that would explain Joel's if you watch some of our first episodes of Joel and I kind of like mixing it together. Joel's just looking at me like, what has Gina and Michael done to me? I must be like down. Am I demoted? Did I get demoted?
And this was before the mohawk too. You didn't have the mohawk back then.
Yes, I had actual normal hair, And then all of a sudden, I came in one day and he was like,
"I'm like, who is this guy in an auto shop showing cleavage all the time?"
Yeah, well, luckily for you, it's wintertime. But
embrace it.
I know. Just going for the coveted female demographic. I understand.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So yes, William, that's And Joel, thank you actually that for reminding me that, because I come in kind of like a I don't know, Tasmanian devil or a whirlwind. I come in and I can't help but be me. I can't help. It's like, God made me this way. I'm going to embrace it, and people are going to accept it or reject it. And if they reject it, I will never know because I'm moving on to the next thing or whatever. Right. So that the next meeting was was with Jared Longshore, who's kind of the second in command there, another amazing mind. And I had already met with him once via StreamYard before. And I forgot about that because I walked past his office, and it's all windows. I walked past his office ready to go to lunch, and he's like, Michael. I'm like, oh yeah, you know what I look like. I know what you look like, but we've met. So then when we met for lunch, it was just this great, reconnecting and updating on everything. And he was very positive. He introduced me to we went to a restaurant. He saw a bunch of people that he knew and introduced me. And then that night, so I had these meetings on Friday with Doug and then Jared, and then they invited me to something called Disputatio, which is their weekly address to this entire student body of the college. So I sat in their Disputatio, and Doug was the speaker at that time. So I got to listen to a message from Doug. And then I had the rest of the evening to myself. And so I explored. I walked around the town. I went to a restaurant and then a coffee shop, listened to a guy playing music. And as I was heading back to my place, I noticed earlier, I had noticed on the map, there was a whiskey bar. And I'm like, oh, that's up my alley. So it happened to be on my way as I was walking to the apartment. It was an upstairs establishment. So I'm like, why don't you go check it out? It's about 9 p.m. And I walk in, and it's a little place. It's like 5 tables, a couple rooms, but 5 tables, big windows. You can overlook the street. Found an empty seat, sat down, got some whiskey to nurse for a while and write in my journal, et cetera, et cetera. Place closed down. Place closed down at 10. But
it's the long hair. I'm telling you, it's the long hair, Michael. Ever since you grew your hair.
Well, get this. Get this.
Receiving God's message. Your hair is a part of that big thing.
The long hair does play into this story, actually. So the guy the bartender is like, oh, you don't have to rush out. I've got to clean up. You can hang out for a bit. So he and I just started chatting a little bit, and I had my lookbook, and I told him a little bit about what I'm working on, et cetera. And his cousin married an Armenian, so he had some understanding. And then right toward the end, he's like, oh, by the way, did you hear about the religious cult that's taking over town? These Christ Church people, like the religious cult that's taking over town. And I smiled and I go, I have heard about that. What do you think of it? And he's just, and it's, I tell you, it's the long hair. I'm sure it's like this long haired guy. There's no way he's with them.
I'm a freaker. I know what you're talking about. I've been there. I get it. Yes.
Right. And so I'm like, oh, tell me, what do you think about that? And he goes, yeah, well, every time a new business opens up in town, I make sure I research who it belongs to, because we don't want to patronize those establishments, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, very interesting. Very polite. And I laughed, and I'm like, thank you, Lord, for showing me, because that's what they're going through. There's such a revival happening through Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, that the regulars there are cannot deny and see it encroaching upon their lifestyles, and all the negative BS that people say about them, they believe, right? And it's like, oh, interesting. And so God gave me that encounter right there, less than 12 hours of being in town, or about 12 hours into town, just independently, randomly. So the next day, I had a meeting in the morning with a guy. Christ Church has a production branch called Canon Plus, and I met with the guy who's in charge of acquisitions, because I have a project for them specifically. Met with him for a while, and then then was the Saturday evening. I was invited to the dinner of the professor from NSA, the ones who also own a restaurant in town. Sat next to a guy. There's like 20, 25 people in the home, kids at the kids table, et cetera. And both sets of parents of the people who were hosting it, both the elderly parents were there. And it was just, I was holding court, right? They all wanted to hear about what I was working on, et cetera. And right next to me is seated a guy that's like married to one of the cousins or something, who he and his wife both went to UCLA. And he goes, well, I'm personal friends with the grandson of Richard Hovhannissian. If you ask any Armenian that's in the know, who's the most authoritative Armenian academic and historian on the planet. It's Richard Hovhannissian out of UCLA. My historian studied under Richard Hovhannissian. I met Richard Hovhannissian, and Richard Hovhannissian actually just passed away this year. But this guy is friends with the grandson of Richard Hovhannissian, which is a whole world that will absolutely be interested in this project. And he's like, I'm also friends with another Armenian guy who has a podcast and blah, blah, blah. So this guy, immediately when he hears what I'm working on, he's processing. He's like thinking of names. He's listing names. Later on, he goes, by the way, I'm also really, really good friends with a guy who's inside Mel Gibson's circle, like directly connected to Mel Gibson. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I have Mel Gibson on my list of people to reach out to. And he's like, well, oh, so I'm having a meeting with this guy, a Zoom meeting right after this. That's the guy I got it. Like, just by getting invited to that dinner, being seated next to somebody that they had invited, that guy like attached himself to me as a friend, like on Sunday morning at church, he came up to me, you got to meet this guy. And it was just like, okay, Lord, this is one of the reasons you brought me here, was this other like contact that is already like working for me in his mind. He's like making connections. And so and there's a lot of, another thing that happened. Here's another thing that happened is at the Disputatio, after the message was done, the students were all dismissed for the Thanksgiving holiday, etc. A gentleman comes up to me, and he's like, "Hi, who are you? Why are you in town or whatever?" And it turns out this is Doug Wilson's younger brother, who's the theology professor at the university or at the college, Gordon Wilson. And I tell him who I am, and he's like, "Oh, my sister lived in Istanbul, married an Armenian. So this is one of the siblings." And he, like, we bond. Like, Doug's the big dog, right? He's a busy guy, everybody's after him. But this guy was giving me just like free time. He just wanted to talk. And on Sunday morning, he came up to me and hung out with me in between services for a long time. And then he gives me the contact information for his brother-in-law, the Armenian, who lives in LA. So I'm like now connected. And so he and I have been texting back and forth. So I'm now connected via text with Doug Wilson's brother and his brother-in-law. And it's like, so all of these connections, it's just, my instincts or God's prompting is bearing fruit, right? Reach out to Doug Wilson. That's the guy you should reach out to for your project. And so I could go on and on. I'll jump out of here at like 3 minutes left. So at 8:57. So
what we're going to do right quick for people that are just tuning in, Michael's given us a breakdown of the near instantaneous experiences that are necessary for moving an agenda forward, which creates a sustainable lifestyle through wonderful religion and word. And what it is and how that all breaks down to really easily is anybody can do this. Michael may sound like he makes it sound hard, but look at it. I know exactly where he's coming from. All you have to do is express yourself with a true heart and true feelings. And it's easy. That's genuine. People actually are attracted to people who are genuine. And it's an easy thing to do when you have decent thoughts in your head. I'm a good example of that because I'm connected with Michael and Joel, a bunch of other really wonderful content creators because
Doug Tnip. Oh,
I try not to. I don't want to toot my whistle, but that's a really cool thing. I can call Doug like right now, and he'll answer the phone. He'll say, "What's up?" And that's just, and what that does is I'm no special, no better than anybody else out there, and I inspire anybody that's watching this to get involved, to start your little YouTube channel, start getting connected, start networking.
If you have an inkling, right? If you have something that you feel like you're supposed to be doing, do it. Don't suppress it.
And if you have a message, I would say if you have a message, one of the things, Michael, you and I have talked about this when you first came to the project. I was like, I connected with because I always said if I were Steven Spielberg or his advisor, I'd say, okay, you did Schindler's List. Now do a movie about the Christian missionaries during the rape of Nanking. And then do a movie about the Armenian Holocaust. And he wouldn't do it. I'm sure he wouldn't do it. Not like I said, but I'm positive because that's not it. Those subjects just aren't touched.
Mainstream. It's not mainstream.
Right. But now's the time for these alternative messages. Now's the time they can get out. There's all kinds of alternative media, all kind of alternative ways to do it. So we no longer have to sit on those messages.
And that's an important point because timing, right? Like having the message, and then like I've been working on this for 6 years, and I thought it'd be done in 3 years and it would be in the theaters or something like that. And then a pandemic happens and a lockdowns happen, and like, but now it's actually the perfect time for the project I'm working on. So God is orchestrating things.
And it's good too that, and I mentioned, Schindler's List was through the eyes of Oscar Schindler. And, like I said, if I did it, the Rape Nanking was so horrible, but if you did it through the Christian missionaries,
right,
now you're doing it through the eyes of the man
hero
who brought justice, right? Because that whole subject would be too horrible unless you do through a person.
Unless there is this is a story of justice, right? And that was the first thing I came to. I was like, how do I do a happy ending out of the massacre of 2 million people? The story has to have a happy ending for people to even want to see it. And it boggled my mind. I'm like, oh, this guy succeeded at assassinating the Hitler of World War I and was acquitted. Oh, okay, that's a happy ending. Oh yeah, that was so. But I did want to get back to Doug TenNapel real quick, because he's unrelated. I had no idea. I mentioned at some point, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go see Doug Wilson. And Doug's like, Doug, that's my buddy. His son is my friend, and this and that. And so when I showed up there, Doug goes, they're sending a camera crew to my house. Like what?
Yeah, they're doing a documentary.
They're doing a documentary about me. I'm like, the day I showed up, I met the 2 guys that were going to be flying to Tennessee to film Doug. And I'm like, oh, I got a couple questions for you. Ask him about Friday Morning Fiasco and this.
Yeah. Can you give a plug there? Yeah.
Well, it was funny when I met Doug Wilson's brother, Gordon. Then Doug Gordon texted me a picture of him and Doug TenNapel from years ago. And I forwarded it to Doug TenNapel. And he's like, it's my guy. So it's like, it just like further confirmation that I'm in the right circle of people and friends. And so,
yes. I think that, like I say, this has been a great ride for I've got myself involved in quite a group of people that is just is wonderful. And anybody that's tuning into this kind of stuff for the first time, if you're mainstream media has done you wrong, and you're starting to see the follies and the lies that's being told, and you come over here because this is like you're like, I'm gonna check out some of this stuff that's on the tubes that everybody's talking about. This is the group of people who are going to get involved with that actually care about what's going on. Your well-being is our well-being. We care, kind of like shampoo with Pantene Pro V. If we don't look good, you don't look good. Kind of one of those things, right? Is that how that works? Yeah, another hair joke, by the way.
Shampoo. Yeah, I know what you're getting at. I know what you're getting at.
Well, all right. On that note, I'm gonna let you 2 finish this out, right? Okay, William, you can handle the ending.
And Michael did not work on the set of Kids on the Hall. Remember Kids in the Hall, that show that came on? I'm crushing your head. Okay,
love you all.
I gotta go.
The hippie has to go. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.
See you, Michael.
All right, Joe, it's just you and I.
I guess so. I did not have 2 minutes of content ready.
I don't know what we're going to do. Well, we can say some nice hopium fun stuff about what's happening in Georgia. I'm not going to go too deep into the whole thing, but those things that Mike Lindell was talking about, how you put your stuff in there and they count it all, and there's all these things that are tallied up, and all of a sudden numbers don't line up. Well, a judge in Georgia, which is a Obama-appointed judge, has just ruled those things unconstitutional and looking into some really significant things that were found by cybersecurity-ists that really validate a lot of things that Mike Lindell we're talking about. And as a fellow Christian that Mike Lindell is, and an excellent person who's put himself out there 100% his business and everything.
Boy, has he, yes.
Yes, I really am glad to see that vindication, because this is a man who's willing to risk it all. And I don't know of anybody right now that's willing to risk $20, let alone their whole empire that was built.
There's a guy baking cakes in Colorado that might fall into that.
Yes, that's the dude who doesn't want to serve people who are doing all that transgender stuff and everything. And if I'm not mistaken,
well, he just doesn't want to participate. He'll serve them. He just won't design stuff and go along.
Yeah, and I think that everybody has the right to do that. That's your freedom of expression.
He's putting it all on the line too. He's put it all on the line.
Well, I mean, it's either all or none. What do you do? Bow down and let him run your business and tell you what you can and can't do? You might as well not do it at all. Fine, go find.
Well, that's what most people are doing. That's what most people on our side are doing.
And
Very-
we need to stand our. A lot of people are backing out on Elon Musk so far as Apple and all that. And a lot of conservatives are stepping up to show force, and that's forcing a neat side economy to be built, which needs to happen anyway. So that's a lot of really cool wins. And so we
Yes.
leave out on that. That's good, inspiring stuff with our last 2 seconds. Joel, you the man.
We're on the winning team.
We are the winning team.
That's
True,
right.
true and pure thoughts and heart of gold. We will be. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Peace. And by the way, just to let you know, I won't be here tomorrow. It's going to be Thanksgiving, and it'll
Happy
be with-
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Actually,
Thank
no,
you.
wait a minute. I might be here tomorrow. I forgot we're doing Thanksgiving on Friday, so I might be here tomorrow. I won't have to let you do the show solo. I forgot about the wife said that her parents want to celebrate Thanksgiving on Friday, so I'll be here. I may be here. Come think of it. I just don't know what's going on. I'll see you tomorrow. It'll be all right. Thank you, Bonnie and Kenneth and Lucas.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we gotta go. I'm running everybody's stuff. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Bye now.